Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. If you're paying attention, you know that you only make money when you work. It might be great money, but it's dependent on you. The information on this podcast will help you solve that. We interview experts and provide analysis into financial freedom through commercial real estate. Why? To help physicians like you thrive. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. This is your host, Dr. Michael McManus. And today we're going to talk a little bit about perseverance and quitting. These are kind of my personal musings today. So I don't know if there's any hard and fast information here, but this has been a lot of really this change for me out of a full-time surgeon and into being mostly real estate and entrepreneur. There's a lot of this question of when do you keep pushing on something and when do you let it go? And so I think I mentioned it in an earlier show. I've been listening to a book here. And I say listen because I listen to pretty much all my books on Audible and a lot more than I read. And I just put in all that time driving around. Highly recommend it. But the book's called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And the whole idea of it, he discusses a lot the idea that, what we really remember the most, what makes life meaningful are experiences, whether they're personal experiences with other people, and that some experiences can only be had at certain times in life. And it's this balance between money and experience. And if we take a point of view that money is just a tool to provide experiences, and that often what happens is we spend our youth working really hard to make money. We're saving for retirement like we're told to do. And by the time you get to retirement, there's a lot of things you can't do. And so a perfect example, and this one hit home for me because he was talking about going skiing and that some guys that love to go skiing, but, in their 20s, they would go skiing and you would ski all day from the time the lift's open till the time the lift's closed. And you could do that every day for an entire vacation for 7 days, for 10 days. And the whole thing was a big hoot. But it was the cost of doing it was much more difficult at that age because you had less. So then as we age, we typically make more money, have more money, and then after retirement, have more time. But when you're the difference about when you go skiing when you're 25 versus when you're 45. When you're 45, there are people who still in their 40s ski all day, every day for 10 days straight, but not most people. And especially if you're a professional and you're working really hard, you're not going to be in the physical shape to do that. And by the time you're 65, even those who have stayed in the best shape, it's going to be a lot bigger ask to do that. And a lot of it is just healing and inflammation, that your body heals so much faster when you're 25, that the soreness and the wear and tear of what goes on, you can be ready to go the next day, where when you're 65, you may not be ready to, or after 2 or 3 days, it adds up on you. So the whole idea is finding this balance between how much do we work and make money to do cool things, and how much do we save that money for later, and what can we get out of that money now that we can't later? Also in the book talks about travel to exotic places or places you've always wanted to go, because those can be meaningful memories and can be a really big deal. Well, a lot of the time, and people put off this travel, and by the time you're 80 years old, there's only so much travel you can do. And one of my old partners talked about this, that after he retired, his bankers were like, Doc, you're going through your money too fast. It's not going to last. You can't go on this many trips. And he was already in his 70s. And he was like, well, listen, 10 years from now, when I get into my 80s, I can't go for me to even try and go to Singapore. I'll get on a 12-hour flight and get a clot and die. That's not going to be something I'm going to want to do. He says there's going to be a point where a big trip is, getting in the golf cart in Scottsdale and going to the grocery store and a movie. And just all of this pointing out that everybody's a little different. But as we age, there are things we're not capable of doing. And we may appreciate certain experiences more as we get older than we did when we were younger. And other activities we're going to appreciate more when we're younger. And so there's a time to do certain activities, but we don't often look at that. And a lot of it is we don't like to admit to our frailty. And so it's a really cool book at going, okay, what are all the things I would like to do in life that would be amazing experiences? And when is the best time to do them? That, maybe going to the Louvre in France. I've been there and it was cool, but I went there when I was about 30 after we spent a week skiing in Chamonix. And I look back and I barely remember the Louvre, but I remember Chamonix. And so going to the Louvre might be something that if that's a big deal to go to some of these historic type places, a great trip to do in your 60s. Maybe where the trip to Chamonix and a week of skiing, on Mount Blanc is definitely a 20s or 30s expedition. You're going to get more out of it and more enjoyment out of it. And you can still do those at different times, but it just thinking about when we do things. So then, kind of going back to perseverance and quitting is kind of the same thing of how long do I persevere in things to get the reward on the other side versus when is the time to quit? And I think these are some of the hardest decisions. And the more I spend time with entrepreneurs, that's really what an entrepreneur is good at, is putting time into building something and knowing when to quit, uh, and when to keep going. And there's some great things, some of these great ideas about minimal viable product or MVP that get something good enough to put out there and see if the world likes it and then iterate from there. So there's lots of stories. The Segway's the classic one where they spent 10 years of development in secrecy and built a factory. And I forget how much money they put into it. And the thing was a total flop. Nobody really wanted them. They thought it would be world changing, but they never tested it in the market to see if this was something people wanted. So that when to quit, and this really came up for me, as we've discussed, as I went through my exit from full-time medicine, and it was difficult because there were a lot of things that I wanted to do in medicine or things that I wanted to do in our practice, um, that didn't mesh with what my partners wanted to get out of the practice. We did a previous episode where we talked about having a vision, and you need that vision to guide it, and we couldn't get there on that vision. But there was a point that I had to decide, am I going to push forward with this and try and get where I want to go to make this what I need it to be? Or is a point where I have to let it go because uh, we're just going to have too much conflict. And what I want is not what they want, whether right or wrong on either side. And so I finally hit this point of, okay, it's time to let this go. And could I go somewhere else and do medicine a different way? I could, but it gets harder and harder to do. And I was having a lot of fun with commercial real estate and entrepreneurship that I finally reached a point and I said, okay, it is time to quit on this and to move on. And what is the next step? And I've told this story before that, I thought that the day after, my last day of work was going to be like the last day of school before summer vacation. I'd go off skipping through the flowers, excited as can be. And instead it was very difficult. It was emotionally difficult and I didn't really know why. And, woke up 3 a.m. the next morning, kind of anxious about, oh my goodness, I just threw away this great job and, made a lot of money. Then we made this move to Salt Lake City and downsizing. I thought, oh, it's going to be great. We're going to be in a smaller place and it's going to cost less. And we're not going to have so much to take care of so we can get out and enjoy. And the downsizing became this huge thing. We thought we got rid of a ton of stuff before we moved. And we get here and there's just stuff everywhere. And and then you have to figure out like what stuff does who want to keep, stuff that I don't care about, my wife cares about, and stuff that she doesn't care about, I care about. And so this whole process, our neighbors, when they, our neighbors in Salt Lake City, when they retired, the husband retired a year before the wife and spent that year downsizing before they moved. So they did it really well. So the first month in Salt Lake was extraordinary stress, was very stressful because we're trying to figure out this whole thing. I'm stressed because this whole thing I'm building now has gone to the wayside. The podcast itself, we just hit a year. We'll do a year anniversary show here. It'll be a little over a year, but we got to a point back in March where I was like 3 months ahead in recording, and it was bad for the guests because they were wondering, like, well, when's my show going to air? And they're emailing me, and and I'm like, oh, we've still got 2 months left. And so they wanted to know, and they didn't like waiting so long. And so I stopped recording to let that catch up. But with everything going on, I didn't make a very good plan of, well, why don't I keep more of these in the bag? So now when I quit working in this whole June, July, that's going to be chaotic move, I've got plenty of recordings to get through. So I didn't do that very well. So we're kind of on the backside of it now where we're just getting ramped up again. So everybody's still been listening. Thanks for listening. We're getting the interviews going again, and we got some great guests coming up here and some really cool things going on. But on this other side of when to quit and when to persevere. And um, my wife got a little scared here recently because, you don't have money coming in. You're watching the money go out. And even though there's plenty of money still that we planned for this, it hits you different than you expected. And she's like, so this real estate thing, how's it going? It doesn't seem like it's going very well. And she's now worried about it. And it's been a tough year because deal flow and this whole interest rate change and things that have been talked about has been really slow. And deals are starting to happen. And there's been a lot of stuff where I'm like, there's those moments you go, should I do something different? Should we have moved here? Should have I stayed where I had a better base in the Midwest? And really this week, we're kind of coming over this hump. Now I got my new office space. I recorded 2 episodes here today. And I got this great little office that I paid more for than I planned. But um, I'm looking out the window here recording, looking at the Wasatch Range. It's absolutely spectacular what it does to my soul. And it's this experience now. Well, this is a very different experience every day and is adding joy and meaning to my life. Just that I can do my work with this view. And come this winter, I can walk out the door and go ski Alta in 20 minutes up the road and do it for 3 or 4 hours and then get back to work and still work. And just today, I think we moving forward with a new real estate project, should have documents coming to sign on and get going. Really excited about some of that. So that finally is moving forward after a year of, and the number of offers and the deals that couldn't be made to make any sense, and kind of starting and stopping on some different stuff. We were getting ready to start a fund and launch raising capital. And the move just kind of threw right in the middle of that and kind of had to put the brakes on it because we're going to do this right. We're not going to do it, kind of halfway. So then we're going to get that restarted. Just kind of reconnecting with people. And I think that's the other part of when to stop and when to persevere. If you make these decisions in a vacuum, it's much harder and it's much easier to be wrong, but just because of the way our mind works and doesn't like to let things go. And I really realized this over the last couple of days as I really re-engaged with my real estate community and network, that there were things that I was talking about and discussing that I'm like, man, this just feels like I'm stuck. And I needed them to remind me of the value of what I've built, the value of the podcast, the value of the relationships, the value of all the connections I've built over the last 2-3 years, and the value I can bring to them and the value they bring to me, the deals that will come out of that, and the experience pros that say, hey, you've built this pipeline. It's just a matter of time before the results start coming back out of it. Probably got another business venture getting ready to go that again just came out of years of networking and putting the right people in the right place, and everybody having a little something different different to offer, kind of bringing it all together. And now these opportunities are starting to come, and they're coming that I'm in a place that I really want to be, that I can do the things that I enjoy and put this whole life together that really I started building it was 5 years ago, because I remember when I was coming up to my 50th birthday and thinking like, wow, 50, that's old, man, this stinks. And then I said, well, let's turn the viewpoint here and say, I'm going to make my 50s the best decade of my life. When I turn 60, I want to look back and go, man, killed it. Because I remember turning 30 and, I was halfway through medical school and looking back and going, man, my 20s, I don't know if this medical school thing was a great idea. This is really hard, but man, I had a lot of fun and did a lot of different stuff and had a lot of amazing experiences in my 20s. That was kind of the benchmark. And so that was the benchmark I was shooting for my 50s here was to do the same thing. And so the first half has been really hard because, you come out of a whole way of being and the transition has been hard. And I'm just starting to now see the rewards of the transition and that accomplishment. It's kind of like the backside of residency. That was really hard, but you're like, okay, look what I accomplished and look what I've built the opportunity on the other side. So I'm pretty hopeful today that, we're halfway there. And then when I turn 60, I'm going to look back and be like, dang, I'm so glad that I did that, because I took a good life, but I turned it into an even more amazing life. And I was able to drag some other people along with me. That's the whole point here of what we're doing with the 𝐲𝐶𝐚𝐭, is we're trying to share this education and all this amazing stuff that I've been introduced to and hand it off so some other people can learn from it too. Same thing with, with getting involved in syndications and real estate. Is now the work that I'm doing. It doesn't just benefit me. There's other people who can invest alongside, and it can make their life better too. And that was the hardest part for me getting started, was identifying who to work with. And that took years. And so hopefully we can shorten that process to some other people. So, here there's been a discussion of things I quit, things that are keeping going, things that the perseverance has carried out. And the biggest part has been, I've got this new vision for my life. And does it fit into that new vision? Is it going to make my life better? And can it make other people's lives better too? Because they can see this whole potential for what's possible for them. So, as you sort things out in your life and are moving things there, I hope this has been helpful. If it's anything you'd like to discuss, reach out, man. Let's jump on a call. I jumped on a call this morning. Just was a follow-up with somebody from an email I sent actually 2 years ago, and might turn into something amazing that we're going to move forward with. So that's why I'm really excited about that. And it's all about, build that network, reach out, talk to some people, make those tough decisions. There's a beautiful life out there for you, and real estate is a great way to finance that and to put it all together. So thanks for joining us today here on the 𝐲𝐶𝐚𝐭. We look forward to seeing you next time.
This has been an episode of 𝐲𝐶𝐚𝐭. If you got value from this episode, you know other surgeons are hungry to become job optional, and you can help them by sharing this content today. Schedule a call and we can make a plan. Looking forward to having you with me on the next episode.